Hello, my name is Joe van Wyk and welcome to my podcast. This is Screenplay Essentials, and today we're talking about character arcs. This is episode 3 in my basic foundation components in developing your main character. I've decided to put character arcs in the foundation blocks of what you need to know to develop your main character, because you'll be surprised how many writers are there that don't understand the subject at all, and it can be daunting. I remember when I was a young film student back in 2010-11, I often asked the lecturers and the professors, explain to me what character arcs are, and they often struggle to explain the basics, or had a very arbitrary response, or just gave one example and that's it. If you're a young filmmaker, a young screenwriter watching this and you're asking what is a character arc, it's essentially the philosophy of having a main character in the beginning of the movie, going over an arc, over a series of obstacles and transformations into becoming a different person at the end of the movie. That's, in layman terms, what a character arc is. There are alternatives to this, and there are some exceptions, and complex things like the hero's journey. But I will go explain all those intricate details and the more traditional arcs in a moment. That's essentially what I mentioned previously in episode 1 and 2, is that when you create a proactive protagonist and you're moving your story forward, what does that look like? And a character arc is essentially that forward momentum of your protagonist in the primary objective and super objective. And it can take many different forms. And I'm fairly certain you have heard of the saying, the outer motivation is a reflection of the inner journey of a character. That is essentially what a character arc entails. And whereas a flat character is more as a steadfast philosophy, and they do not change at all throughout the movie. Now, from what I've experienced and I've learned from what our writers do things, I've noticed the thing that 50% of writers follow the character's arc, implement character arcs in their stories, and the other 50% just ignore them completely. And this episode is not about what's right or what's wrong. It's just giving you all the information, and then at the end of it, you can decide what you do with your main character, your premise, your story, and if you're implementing a round character or a fat character. And speaking of round and fat, this is essentially an episode dealing with a round character that's producing various different character arcs, whereas a fat character doesn't have an arc, mostly a negative and a positive aspect to it, but it's a round character versus a fat character. And even before I did this video, I just quickly went on Google and opened a few articles just to see if there's something I missed or something someone else maybe came up with. But the first thing that jumped out to me is that all 5 articles use different language, and they're all saying the same things. And this often happens with writers, or in young writers, getting a lot of jargon and a lot of different language that basically says the same thing. And hopefully in this video I can summarize all these type of character arcs, the more traditional character arcs, and paint the picture more accurately and precisely, so that you have a full understanding of what a story structure can be for your main character. Okay, before I jump into the more traditional character arcs that we all have seen everywhere in books and articles and seminars and lectures, I'm fairly certain you have seen a couple of these diagrams and graphs. And before I get into all those specific details, I would like to share with you a very, very specific character arc that I stumbled upon when I was a young filmmaker. And I remember watching a video. I think it was a Hollywood executive producer, or just a Hollywood producer, that made a video explaining the character arc, and she demonstrated a very specific diagram that I've never seen anyone else speak about or use at all. And this diagram, which I call the ladder arc, but I can't take credit for this. This certain lady, I can't remember her name, unfortunately, she taught this, and I'm just calling it a ladder arc. And you'll see this ladder arc, literally all films, 100% of all films that has been ever made and will be made, follow this arc indefinitely. And it's like the ultimate arc that rules them all. And what a ladder arc essentially is the visual depiction of your main character moving up levels or down levels in their interaction with other people and other characters in the story. Now, first off, let's start with level 1. Your main character is a lonely main character. They are often isolated, and they are generally the type of character that starts the movie off alone by themselves, and they are going on to a journey to meet other people or experience the conflict that surrounds them, and they are by themselves. And this character has a desire to meet people and connect with other people. Level 2, if they go one up, it's called connection. This is where one character is connected with the second character. And a lot of films, I would even say 95% of all movies, is between level 1 and level 2, where a single character is trying to connect with a secondary character or a supporting role in the main character, like a romance genre. The boy meets girl, boy loses girl, try to get the girl back. That famous formula in romance genres can be beautifully illustrated by just level 1 and level 2. Then above this is level 3, which is the protagonist and 2 other people. So it's a union of 3 people or more. This would be family members or friends in a social environment, on a working space, working colleagues. This is usually the happiest a protagonist can be or wants to be, because they are loved, they love others, they're respected by others, and it's a tight union. Then going to level 4, this would be a humanitarian type of status in which the main character sacrifices themselves for the rest, for others, for the greater good. The next level, level 5, this would be the extreme point of this ladder, where this would be God, angels, spiritual guides, all the good entities that often help protagonists, but protagonists would usually never reach this high. The ceiling is often at level 3, because level 4 means they have to die, they just have to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. Then going downwards, you'll see 0, level 0. This will be an animal or a robot or a spell. This is often, for example, if the main character starts off as level 1 and goes into some sort of torment. You often see this in movies where characters reaches the low point in a story and they are spiraling out of control in their madness. And this is essentially this level where they will end up. Even characters that are bewitched or put a magic spell on them or some sort of puppetry, they often are controlled by others. And this is why robots also fit in here, because robots are programmed to either protect or harm. And this would be that 0 would be this level of an animalistic type of nature. Think of Tarzan, for example. Tarzan was raised by apes, and then his love romance, or the romantic character in that story, tries to civilize Tarzan, and so he goes up the ladder from 0 to 1 to 2, etc. Then going down to -1, this would be your psychopaths and monsters. This is essentially a character with 0 conscious, and they are in its core evil. Now, we all know psychopaths can act the part of an angel or a family member, but they've got sinister intentions beneath, and they murder and kill people. And especially with monsters, so if you not so specifically much about like a werewolf or a zombie, but if your main character becomes a monster in their path of destruction, like they become like a big crime boss, mafioso, or they murder lots of people, or whatever the crime or thing that shackles them, they will become a monster on this level. Then level -2, this would be all your evil entities, your demons, the devil, poltergeists, all these things that has a negative effect on others and the protagonist, or corrupting the protagonist. So you can see there's also a moral compass in this ladder. If you go up, it's goodness, and if you go down, it's evil. Once you understand this ladder, you begin to see everything makes sense. You can apply any movie or series to this ladder, and you'll see the protagonist moving up and down on this ladder. For example, let's use a famous series like Breaking Bad. Walter White, he starts on level 3 as a family member, and because of his criminal activities, in his obsession to pay for his cancer treatments, he drops down to level 2, in which he's dealing his daily life doings with Jesse, and he's on level 2 with Jesse. And you'll see throughout the story, Walter he keeps falling to level 1, level 2, level 1, and he always tries to get back to level 3, because level 3 is the family. And as we all know, at the end of the series, he doesn't get the family back, and he even loses Jesse. So he tries to get at least back, like from 0 to 1, to at least to get back to on level 2. And I think he did manage to get back on level 2. But you see this conflict of the protagonists moving up and down in their healthiest point, which is the ceiling of the family, and then the lowest point with the basement level, which is level 0, in which they torment themselves and try to either improve themselves, or they become the monster. For example, if you look at level 4, the humanitarian level, this would be like Jesus Christ sacrificing himself for the rest of humanity. A character like Caesar in Planet of the Apes, where they start off as a family member, he loses his family all the way to 1, and then he slowly gains a connection with the other apes. He forms a connection, he forms a family again, and then at the end of the 3rd movie, he sacrifices himself, or he does all the heroic things so that his family can live on, and he reaches level 4 as a humanitarian. So you can see the progression of a character arc very, very crystal clear by utilizing this ladder arc. Joker, for example, is a beautiful case study of the falling arc, in which you see he starts on level 2 and he tries to get to level 3 by connecting with his co-workers, but they all mock him, and he has trouble with his mother, and so he goes down and down and down until he commits a crime and becomes a 0. And that I think he tries to, if I'm not mistaken, to connect with his father, and then he discovers he was adopted, and Thomas Wayne is not his father. So things become worse and worse and worse, and he becomes the psychopath, he becomes the monster that we all know. So you'll see all these traditional character arcs that I will explore in a moment. They all beautifully fit on this ladder, and it's such a beautiful way of explaining the character arc to any young filmmaker, young screenwriter trying to understand what this means. And the application process of this is so beautiful, because you can literally design your own story just by using this ladder arc, knowing that this ladder arc is compatible with every film that is ever made. This is why I call it the ultimate character arc, which is the ladder arc. Okay, so now I'll go into the more traditional character arcs that we all see in articles and books and lectures, and I will just summarize the basic concepts of them, and if something sticks out to you, to fully research it and apply that knowledge to your story. Okay, so number 1, the chains arc. This is a very popular character arc that a lot of writers use, the ones that utilize as a round character, because it forces your main character to adopt a new philosophy, a new perspective of their worldview, and they become essentially a better or a changed person at the end of the movie. This sort of change is often a very violent change, and it makes them question their belief system, and they adopt new belief system, or they realize the thing that they truly need to solve their world problem or their world crisis, and then they return to the ordinary world as a changed character. The chains arc is a derivative of the hero's journey, in which I'll explain a bit later, but just understand that it's a very simplified version of that, and it's a very popular one. A lot of movies uses the chains arc to throw your main character into a whirlwind of trouble and horrendous experiences in order to change and become the person they need to become to solve their world problem. The growth arc. The growth arc is a very linear type of character arc, in which usually the character starts off as someone either young or naive, or just someone with a low skill level. And throughout the film, they gradually become a better person. They gain more skills. They become more experienced, and they become mature in themselves. If you think about a young person becoming older, or an intern starting at a workplace and they become the manager at the end, it doesn't have to be a superhero skill orientated thing, and they return to the ordinary world as a more mature individual, often taking on the next challenges in the sequel. The famous Luke Skywalker is a brilliant example of he starts off as a farm boy, becomes a Jedi, trains as a Jedi, and becomes the best version of a Jedi that can be in order to save his father, etc., etc. The young karate student becomes the better version of himself, and as we see in the later series with Cobra Kai, we see the maturity of Daniel, if I'm not mistaken. Dune, for example, is another story about a main character who starts off in a royal family, he loses everything, and is forced to adapt a new life, a new survival with a desert and a desert planet, and he steps into that prophecy role of the chosen one. And you can see that character experiencing sort of a hero's journey in that growth arc. Okay, so the rise and fall arc. This is a very popular Machiavellian type of character arc in which the character starts in the beginning of the movie trying to achieve some sort of success, or they already starts off as a successful person, but essentially this person reaches a height of rich fame and fortune and status and respect. Whatever the thing is that is the crux, or the thing that they often ignore, is the very thing that flips the entire the journey, and the character then fall into disgrace, and they end up being a tragedy figure in which they either pay with their own lives, or they experience the worst life circumstances that you can experience, horrified by their misfortune. Because of this extreme luck in the beginning, they're experiencing misfortune in the late half, and they become a tragic figure either by death or by circumstance. Succession, for example, is a beautiful case study in which you see the rise and fall each season, going in and out, and the main character, because of what he did and what he ignored, is the very thing that defeats him at the end. And we all relate to this character arc very passionately, because it happens to all of us on a daily basis. We experience heights and we experience the lows of the low. The decline arc. This is a type of monster arc in which the main character starts off already experiencing life as a misery, and because the conflict occurs, they struggle, the trials and errors, they struggle, it gets worse and worse, until a point where they either reject the help, or they realize that everyone else is also evil, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and they become the monster themselves in the climax, and they return to the ordinary world as the problem, as a new problem. And I mentioned Joker before, but this is a beautiful case study in which the character is declining downwards into a spiral of madness and turmoil. And often this character arc is given to antagonists, but if you have a protagonist experiencing this, it's a beautiful character arc in which they stumble down into a pit of no return. The reversal arc. The reversal arc is something I don't really see in a lot of films as a primary plot. I think a lot of people use a reversal arc with antagonists. When you hear about the redemption arc, this is essentially where in this reversal component, where the character starts off as with a specific worldview perspective, and because of the conflict or because of what they experience, they adopt a new perspective, and they realize, they find out that this perspective is misleading them in some way, or one way or another, and they revert back to their old ways or their old perspective. It's a complete reversal, 180-degree reversal back to the beginning, and they return to the ordinary world unchanged. I think the reason why this character arc isn't that popular in mainstream primary plots, because when you start a story off as a negative and the character adopts a positive, you're going to end the movie with a negative, and that might be not a good thing with the audiences, because of the positive thing that the character learns. they reject or neglect to fully understand it, and they revert back to their flawed former selves. That can become a negative response in the audience. But you can flip this also as well, where you start off as a positive, the character adopts a negative perspective, and flips back to a positive, realizing their mistakes and understanding that they were just misled, and go back to their former self where they were correct in the beginning. Like I said, a lot of times this type of character arc is given to antagonist, in which they redeem themselves by they were once good, but their flawed philosophy caused them to become the villain, and the hero saves them at the end by restoring the former philosophy. Okay, so the famous hero's journey. This one is a 12-step one of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. This diagram, this story structure is very, very specific to the story that you're telling. It's literally a mold. The other ones are more flexible in what you want to do, but following the hero's journey is a very specific mold. And I'm not going to go into all these specific plot points, because when you apply the hero's journey to your own story, you need to do thorough research on these plot points to apply them effectively to your own story, and it can be done exceptionally well. The next one showing here is the 17.1, the monolith, which is all the same thing, but it's just more complex. And if you do the hero's journey, you want to really execute it as best as you can. And there are a lot of writers that say the hero's journey is the only story structure that it's out there and is the only one that works, but I think that's nonsense. A lot of writers often cherry pick certain of these plot points, and they build their own thing. And this is why, if we go back to the change arc, you can see it's a simplified version of the hero's journey in a sense, but it's a very flexible structure in which writers do their own thing. And the hero's journey is a template to use. But if you're telling a very specific fantasy genre, or even a drama, if you do that specific under the hero's journey, you need to do thorough research on the plot points so that you achieve a good result. And speaking as an audience member, I would pay good money to watch a perfectly executed hero's journey. Even though, yes, it's predictable, these plot points are predictable, but if it's executed brilliantly, then you take my money. Because this is often a fantasy genre, but if you're telling a romance, or you're writing a drama genre, a human drama, you can think of clever ways to utilize these components in the plot points in the same sense, staying true to the hero's journey, and have a brilliant success of the film. So it's a matter of just doing thorough research in these plot points and applying it to your story. Okay, the flat character. The flat character doesn't have an arc. This is often called the anti-arc. This character starts in the beginning of the movie with a steadfast philosophy, and they are kept throughout the entire film till the end unchanged. They seldomly have a desire to improve their inner workings, their morality or their philosophy. They don't care about that. They know they've got the skills or the wisdom or the knowledge to solve the puzzle, solve the trials, and defeat the enemy, or solve the world conflict. And they return to the ordinary world and more confident than ever. And this is why when you use a flat character in an action genre, making a sequel, making a trilogy is so much easy, because the character doesn't need to go with a complex inner changing component. They are throughout the film just a badass type of character. Now, this doesn't have to be an action figure. You can literally just have an ordinary person with ordinary life, but they go through the situation, experiencing situations, and come out at the end unchanged, but survived through all the ordeal. The positive flat arc is essentially what it says. It's a character that positively moves the plot forward. And the negative flat character, as what the title suggests, the character is negative in the start with the philosophy, and they remain stubborn, they remain steadfast right till to the end, in which they either resolve the conflict or not. Often villains are negative flat characters because they only have a desire to destroy or conquer the world, and that's it. They don't have any other desire to change or help other people. And Darth Vader is a beautiful example of this, where the character is a flat character throughout. It's only at the very, very, very end where there's change happening. But that's because of the third movie, it has a different character arc on its own. James Bond, for example, is a flat character. He gets his tools, he gets his tasks, and his only objective is to defeat the villain, save the world, and sleep with women. He has no desire to learn or to change himself, and you can literally go through all those movies. There are some nuances here and there, but the core of, or the design of James Bond, the identity of James Bond, is that he's a flat character. Indiana Jones, for example, is a very likable flat character, in which he is a professor, so he has knowledge of history. He has a thirst for adventure, and is skilled with a whip, and he uses his knowledge and his skills to solve puzzles. He has no desire to transform into something better. He's also a flawed character. He makes mistakes. He's often very unlucky. He often gets captured, but he's a likable fat character. So writing a fat character doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It can be stereotypical, one-dimensional type of character, but if you treat it very carefully and really with expertise, you can really entertain your audience. And a lot of writers who prefer writing fat characters often see this type of character as a vehicle to move the plot forward. And round characters are often seen as the character is pushing the plot forward, whereas the flat character, the plot moves the character. So in conclusion, hopefully this starting to make sense, and you can see why I'm including this into the foundation of developing your main character. And you start to see how effectively you can tell your story and move your story forward by having a proactive protagonist. Just one note, when you decide on a specific character arc that you like, don't just follow my scribbles around these diagrams. Do thorough research and open articles and read books on these character arcs so that you can fully implement them as best as you can. And this also doesn't mean that the premise that you have, the unique story that you're writing, is that you have to force all these things on your story. 50% of writers often write the first draft in completion, and then afterwards they tweak things, utilizing a character arc to make the story stronger. My specific style, and the other 50% of writers often like to design and plan out everything perfectly, either via index cards on the wall, creating like a editing timeline so that they move things around, and you see the design in which your character is moving the plot forward. And other writers often make a checklist of like bullet points, things that they need to check off, reaching those beats. But whatever style fits you, it's important to emphasize that there's no right or wrong way. It's the style in which you are comfortable in writing. Like I said, there's a lot of writers that don't even consider using a character arc at all. They do their own thing, whether they use a fat character or they use a round character, but they don't conform to any of these character arcs particularly. The thing to understand about these character arcs is that they are set to elicit a entertaining response in your audience, that you are writing your story with purpose, and that you're not just writing things out of the blue and hoping it all makes sense at the end, so that you have an understanding of where the primary plot is moving forward and how you entertain your audience. And this is why I introduced the ladder arc, hopefully for the first time if you haven't seen this, so that and I can't take credit for it at all. It's unfortunately I can't remember the lady's name who explained this. She was a Hollywood producer, but it's a very, very beautiful depiction in how the character physically moves between levels, interacting with other people in any form. And if you're creating a flat character, your character will stay on level 2 for the rest of the movie, or they will stay on level 1 for the rest of the movie. If you have a change arc, it goes up and down. If you have a growth arc, it starts at one point and goes up. If you have the rise and fall, up and down. If you have a decline arc, it drops down. If you're using the hero's journey, it just goes up and down the whole time. And also do understand that when this character goes up and down, that it's not trivial things. It's due to either massive change or extreme conflict or a boiling point temperature that allows them to either go up or go down. Either they gain success by going up, or they experiencing some sort of failure, or other people doing harm on them, and they go down the list. And if you are a young filmmaker watching this, if you understand what I've explained in this ladder arc, you can physically design beautiful, complex stories by utilizing this ladder arc in how your character moves, whether they start off as a family, something really bad happens, they drop all the way down, and throughout the movie they're trying to get back to level 2, they're trying to get back to level 3, but another conflict happens or another bad thing happens and they drop down even more. Or you see the entertainment value that you can achieve by understanding and applying the ladder arc in your own story and developing your main character and whatever premise that you are using. If there's a character arc that I accidentally missed, please leave a comment and share with the rest. Maybe there are specific character arcs utilized in novels or comic strips, or I don't know. But if I haven't mentioned anything, please feel free to share with the community. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I see you for the next episode.